one of the things I'm interested in is this concept. I think you coined the term. I could be wrong about that. This concept of the censorship industrial complex, which is clearly something that has developed over the course. Of course, it's as you say in your testimony you gave to U.S. The House Select Committee on the Weaponization of Federal Governments and Social Media. You talk about this. You relate it back to Eisenhower's famous speech about the military industrial complex. And it does seem like there's a fair bit of overlay in that. But I mean, I know it's very complicated. How do you unpack that so that Australian audiences can understand this concept of the censorship industrial complex?
Yeah, I mean, the censorship industrial complex is a reference to the military industrial complex. The military industrial complex was the famous expression used by President Dwight, former General Dwight Eisenhower, as he's leaving the presidency. And it's this amazing speech. He's very dark, he's warning basically of sort of an alliance between think tanks and military contractors to influence US foreign policy, to basically maybe go to wars that we shouldn't go to, or make decisions or push NATO expansion, for example, that maybe isn't in the best interest of the United States. That's the idea of the military industrial complex. And he was worried that it would have a light. It's basically the deep state. I mean, it's funny because no one ever says that, but it's like the military industrial complex was kind of the deep state, but it was more of also had a private sector element, often government funded of the private sector. So the censorship industrial complex is very similar. I mean, it's basically a set of agencies, a set of NGOs, many of which are funded by the US government, that want to censor what people are allowed to say and read online around vaccines, gender, climate change, energy, Ukraine. It wants to prevent it wants to shrink the confines of the Overton window, so to speak. That what is acceptable discussion, it wants to shrink it back to where it was before, podcasting and social media and Joe Rogan and everybody kind of opened it up, and Twitter opened it up. And now Elon Musk has opened it even more with his takeover of X. So yeah, I mean it's yeah, look, it's like who it's Atlantic Council, it was the University of Washington, it was Stanford, it was something called Graphica. It was people that always have you know, relationships with the Ivy Leagues, but also you can find connections to people in sort of intelligence and security agencies. And the most famous here was the Department of Homeland Security, which was created after 9/11 to deal with terrorism. They asked several NGOs to create a basically mass censorship effort. They call it flagging of misinformation, where they then put pressure on the social media companies. They basically deliver big documents to them. Here's, are all of the things that are violating your rules and are hurting people and are bad, and this is the speech that we want to see censored. And then they would try to put pressure on Twitter and Facebook in particular to censor that wrong think. And the bottom line is like we're discovering things. Facebook, famously complained that the White House was asking them to censor even true stories of vaccine side effects. Mark Zuckerberg, the head of Facebook and Meta, just came out and said that he regretted censoring discussions that COVID may have leaked from a lab because Facebook did that after it was pressured to do so by the White House. He said that he was pressured by FBI or was warned by FBI that the Hunter Biden laptop. He was warned by FBI that it was Russian disinformation. Never had anything to do with the Russians. So the FBI ran a disinformation campaign at Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, that's very important for people to understand. And Mark Zuckerberg knows that and was upset about it. So that is the censorship industrial complex. It really includes all of these government agencies, FBI, CIA, Department of Homeland Security, White House, CDC, or Center for Disease Control, plus a bunch of NGOs that are partly funded by these supposedly altruistic philanthropists, but also funded by the US government to do fact checking and flagging, and then the bully pulpit. So there's plus they would also pressure the advertisers not to advertise on Facebook and Twitter unless they did more censorship. So you see a very sophisticated, I mean, just the Hunter Biden laptop disinformation that FBI did, where they would telling the social media companies and also telling the journalists that there was some Russian disinformation coming having to do with Hunter Biden before it comes out. It's a very sophisticated operation. I came out of, like I said before, I came out of the left. I came out of environmental and social justice movements. I even helped on publicity campaigns, and it was disorganized. It was just all the typical hippy dippy left wing, always late. It's never very good, errors, low quality. These operations that I'm describing being run by FBI and others, these are sophisticated. They remind you of military operations. And then, we discovered a whole handbook they had of ways to basically demand censorship, but also spread disinformation. I mean, this was sophisticated stuff. This is stuff that, like, it's like multiple teams. I once described it to like watching Born Identity because, like, when you watch Born Identity, you're always like, wow, these are like professional intelligence community people and how they behave. You start watching these, what they call information operations. It's not just political or activist stuff. It is stuff that feels like it's a military or intelligence operation. And obviously, shouldn't need to be said, but that's grossly illegal. Our governments are not supposed to be engaged in spreading disinformation. They're not supposed to be engaged in politics or elections. And so what we've documented and what came out with the Twitter files, but now we've had other Facebook files and other social media files, has really been just massive abuses of power by very, very powerful and very sophisticated government agencies and operatives.